Hey everyone. So right now I want to go through Matthew 27 verses 45 through 51 and John 19 verses 28 through 30, and then I want to take some time to worship. But if you haven't read those passages yet, feel free to pause now and read those and then come back so we can study them together. But first we're going to take a look at Matthew. So Matthew in verse 45, he stops looking so much at the physical aspects of Jesus' death, and he begins putting a lot more emphasis on the spiritual significance of Jesus' death. And he does that by highlighting four things. He highlights first the darkness of just the day. And this is actually fulfilling a prophecy in the book of Amos. And not only that, but it's just symbolizing the weight and the darkness of the sin and condemnation that Jesus took on himself. You see, even though Jesus was sinless, he took on the debt and paid it in full for everyone. And so the darkness just highlights that. I want us to think about it for a second. If it were noon to 3 o'clock and just a bright sunny day, and then all of a sudden this darkness comes over the day as far as you can see. It would be shocking, but how appropriate for a day like the day of Jesus' death. So that's the first element that we have. The second element that we have is the cry of Jesus. And this cry is nothing short of a cry of being forsaken by God. And even though Jesus, he had the foresight that he would be resurrected, and he had foresight that he would eventually be reunited with God, that doesn't diminish the weight and the truth of being forsaken by God, of feeling that separation from his Father. You see, this is the result of Jesus taking on flesh and then taking on the condemnation of all people. He experienced true separation from the Father, and Jesus' cry just highlights the weight of what is happening. The next element that we see, the third one, is the temple curtain being torn. And what this suggests and what this symbolizes is that God had opened up a way for reconciliation with all humanity, whereas relationship and the fulfillment of a relationship with God wasn't fully possible before. Now God is being made available for all people, not just the Jewish people, but also the Gentiles as well. Relationship with God was then made available for everyone. And then the last element that Matthew points out is just the earthquake and the raising of the dead bodies. And this just simply points to Judgment Day. And what this shows us is that the people of God, for them, Judgment Day wouldn't be a day of condemnation, but instead a day of new life. And so as we look at these four elements in Matthew, what it's really just pointing to and highlighting is the weight of what Good Friday is all about, but again, the reassurance and the fulfillment that we can have of Jesus' promise for new life, and that we can have through Jesus Christ. And as we turn over to John, what I love is that we see the fulfillment of a prophecy, but as we read on, we get to this statement by Jesus where he says, "It is finished." If you look in the Greek, that word there is tetelestai, and that means the sacrifice is complete. And what Jesus is pointing to is that the spiritual battle that had been ruling over our lives had been won, and victory can be found in Christ. That the ultimate act of grace had been made and would be fulfilled just a few days later at his resurrection. And so as we think of these spiritual truths and as we look at the grace of God, I want us to wrap up our time today just by going to God in worship, singing in praise of just the grace that was displayed at the cross. And as we look forward to Easter, I just want us to be reminded of the weight and the humility that we should feel when we look at the cross, but also just rest assured in the grace that's been poured over us through Jesus' death and resurrection.
For he is waiting, his hands of kindness welcome us home. Come to the arms of grace, he has never left you, and he never will. Come as you are, he is calling. Bring your battle scars, he'll embrace them. Come as you are to the arms of grace. with heaven, salvation.